Before this story begins, imagine being too young to understand pain and too sick to play outside, laugh freely, or dream big. Now imagine a shadow appearing at your hospital door. Not a doctor, not a nurse, but a retired police dog with soft eyes and a warrior heart. Like this video if you believe in healing that goes beyond medicine. Share it with someone who still believes in the quiet strength of animals. Comment if a dog has ever made your darkest day brighter. And subscribe for more true stories that remind us. Sometimes the strongest heroes walk on four legs. The hospital room was small, painted in faded shades of hope. Monitors beeped, IVs dripped. Outside, spring had started. But inside, it was always winter. 6-year-old Ava lay curled in her hospital bed, her tiny chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Diagnosed with leukemia, her body was fragile, her spirit tired. She rarely spoke, rarely smiled, not since the chemo started, not since her hair fell out, not since her friends stopped visiting. She had one toy, a worn, stuffed dog with one ear missing, clutched tightly in her hand like a memory she refused to let go. The nurses whispered, the doctors frowned. Ava was slipping into a silence even medicine couldn't reach. Until one day, the elevator dinged, and a retired canine named Diesel walked in. Before he padded into that hospital hallway, Diesel had worn a badge. He was a decorated German shepherd, once partnered with Officer Jason Reed, a father of two, a community hero, and Diesel's best friend. Together they had tracked down missing children, disarmed criminals, and once pulled a man from a burning car just seconds before it exploded. They were inseparable until the chase that ended it all. A routine call, a warehouse, a man with nothing left to lose. The gunshot echoed through the night. Jason didn't make it, and Diesel, covered in blood and soot, refused to leave his side. After that, he wasn't the same. He stopped eating, stopped responding. The force retired him with honor, but Diesel didn't want medals. He wanted his partner. For months he lay quietly in a foster home, until a nurse from St. Matthew's pediatric unit saw his story. She wasn't looking for a therapy dog. She was looking for something more. Something that might reach a little girl who hadn't smiled in weeks. And so Diesel was brought in, not with fanfare or ceremony, but with hope. The first time Ava saw Diesel, she didn't speak, not because she was shy, but because her body wouldn't let her. 10 years old, lungs barely functioning, a diagnosis doctors struggled to name. Machines breathed for her. Needles, wires, whispering nurses. It had been that way for months. She stared at the ceiling most days, counting the holes in the tiles above her head. Then one morning, a soft scratch at the door, followed by heavy paws and the click of nails on tile. A nurse whispered, "He's here." Ava didn't look up, until Diesel rested his head gently on her bed. Big brown eyes, ears alert, a silence that didn't ask anything of her. He didn't bark, didn't demand. He just waited. And in that moment, for the first time in weeks, Ava blinked and smiled. Ava's condition was stable until it wasn't. What began as a cough spiraled into a storm. Alarms blared. Oxygen dropped. Nurses rushed in with pale faces and trembling hands. Her mother was ushered out, sobbing into her sleeve, while Ava gasped like a fish pulled from the sea. Diesel barked once, a deep, booming sound that silenced the room. The doctor turned. "Let him stay," Ava's mother begged from behind the glass. "He's all she trusts." Permission was granted. Diesel padded into the chaos and sat beside her bed. He didn't flinch at the wires. He didn't blink at the machines. He laid his head next to her trembling hand and breathed with her, slow, steady, deep. The monitors began to quiet. Ava's panicked gasps slowed. Her fingers curled weakly into his fur. In the middle of the storm, Diesel became her anchor. Ava survived the night, but just barely. Doctors shook their heads. She's too weak. We've done everything we can. But Diesel wasn't done. Each morning he'd nudge open the hospital room door. No leash, no command, just instinct. He'd climb onto Ava's bed, curled gently beside her failing body, and breathe. His heartbeat became her lullaby, his warmth, her blanket of calm. And when nurses inserted needles, Ava didn't cry. She looked at Diesel, and he blinked slowly, as if to say, "I'm here." One day, her mother placed a stethoscope over Diesel's chest and guided it to Ava's ears. For the first time in days, Ava smiled. "It sounds like thunder," she whispered. That whisper changed everything. Because that night, when everyone else had gone home, Ava sat up on her own. Shaky, fragile, but alive. She reached for a crayon and scribbled one word on her tray. Diesel. The quest had begun. Not for her to survive, but to live. The doctors couldn't explain it. Her chart still showed danger. Her blood counts still low. But Ava was changing. She asked to sit in a chair, then to stand, but only if Diesel was beside her. They gave her a walker. She used it once, then refused. "If Diesel walks," she said, "then I can too." So they walked, down sterile hallways, past curious nurses, past patients who hadn't smiled in days, until they saw her, Ava, in her fuzzy unicorn socks, and Diesel pacing beside her like a shadow made of loyalty. The hospital became their world. The IV pole, her dance partner, the heart monitor, their background music. And in that world, Diesel wasn't just her protector. He was her anchor. The moment Diesel placed his paw on the physical therapy mat, Ava stepped onto it too. That day, she took 6 steps, unsteady, painful, determined. No one spoke. No one needed to. The break had happened. The girl who almost didn't survive the week had just walked into the fight of her life. And she wasn't walking alone. It wasn't just Ava who was healing. In the quiet corners of room 407, her mother, Lena, watched something she never expected. Her daughter laughing, smiling. Not because the chemo worked, but because Diesel was there. Every morning, he'd nudge the door open with his nose, carrying a worn-out tennis ball. Every night, he'd curl beside her bed, head resting near the IV pump, chest rising in sync with hers. Lena started bringing Diesel treats, then toys, then stories. She whispered them aloud when Ava was too tired to speak. One day, Lena said, "I thought I'd lose her." The nurse smiled softly. "You still might," she said, "but look at her now." Outside that room, doctors discussed charts. Inside, a mother and a dog built a bridge between fear and hope. It was Diesel who taught Ava to trust again. And Lena, too. She'd been holding her breath for months. Now she breathed through sobs and giggles, watching her daughter cling to life through the warmth of a dog's gaze. Diesel became more than just a visitor. He became Ava's shadow. When she was strong enough to sit up, he'd climb onto the bed beside her, careful not to tug the oxygen line. When she whispered her secrets, like how she missed her bike or that she didn't want her hair to fall out, Diesel listened without judgment. The nurses started marking his visits on the whiteboard. Diesel rounds, 9 a.m. sharp. He became a fixture, like the IV poles or the hum of machines, but warmer, kinder. One morning, a small miracle happened. Ava, pale and tired, reached for her toy doctor kit. She opened Diesel's mouth, checked his heartbeat, and giggled when he licked her stethoscope. It was the first time she played since her diagnosis. The staff peeked through the glass window, smiling. Even the janitor paused to watch. A week later, Ava stood up, shaky, leaning on Diesel's back for balance, but standing. Her mom filmed it. It wasn't part of the treatment plan. It wasn't in any medical journal, but somehow, love had given her legs again. That night, Diesel slept curled at her feet. Ava whispered into his fur, "I don't feel so broken when you're here." The doctors had news, the kind that comes in long sighs and gentle voices. Ava's white blood cell count had dropped. Her body was tired, too tired for the next round of chemo. Her mother clutched her chest, trying to breathe through the weight of it. Ava just looked at Diesel. "Will he still come if I don't get better?" she asked. No one knew how to answer. That evening, Diesel was scheduled to visit another ward, but he pulled away from his handler at the elevator, his paws skidding on the tile floor, until he was back outside Ava's door. He lay down and refused to leave. Ava didn't speak much that night, but her hand never let go of Diesel's ear. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She just held on. At 2:17 a.m., her vitals plummeted. Monitors screamed. Nurses rushed in. Diesel growled low, protective, primal, but stepped back when the staff swarmed. They worked on her for 6 eternal minutes. When it was over, a nurse whispered, "She's stable, but barely." Diesel rested his head on the bed and closed his eyes, as if he too had been holding his breath. The room was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't peaceful. It was a war zone that had survived the night. Morning didn't bring light, just fluorescent hums and clipped footsteps. Ava had slipped into a semi-conscious state, eyes half-lidded, breaths shallow. Her mother was a statue beside the bed, one hand gripping a cup of coffee gone cold, the other clutching the edge of Ava's blanket as if she could anchor her daughter to the world. Diesel barely moved. He lay curled at the foot of the bed, watching every beep of the monitor, every twitch in Ava's fingers. But the whispers had begun. "She's not improving. Maybe it's time to prepare. There's not much more we can do." Her mother heard every word, but didn't let a single tear fall. Diesel stood up, walked to the hallway, and barked. Once, sharp, demanding. A nurse peeked out. "Something wrong, boy?" He barked again, twice this time, and then ran back to Ava's bed, nosing her cheek, nudging her wrist, pawing gently at her ribs. "She's waking up?" the nurse asked. No, she wasn't. But Diesel wouldn't give up. He circled the bed, whined, barked again. He pulled at her blanket, nuzzled her neck, licked her closed eyelids. Ava didn't move. The nurse was about to leave, until her hand twitched, so small, so weak, but real. Diesel barked one more time, and this time the monitor beeped louder, faster. "Get the doctor!" the nurse shouted. Because something was happening. Not a miracle. Not yet. But something. Alarms screamed. Nurses flooded the room. A monitor's steady rhythm turned into a blaring, panicked staccato. And then, flatline. Ava's mother collapsed into the wall, hands over her mouth. The world spun. The floor swayed. Diesel barked. Once. Twice. A desperate cry that pierced the sterile silence. But no one heard him. Not really. They were too busy. Paddles charged. Clear! Ava's body jumped. Once, still flat. Again, twice, still flat. Her mother sobbed, whispered Ava's name like a prayer, like a goodbye. Diesel whimpered, then leapt onto the bed. Doctors tried to stop him, but something in his eyes froze them. He curled against her, placed his head on her chest, and closed his eyes. Silence. Then, one beep, a long pause. Another, and another. The monitor stuttered back to life. Soft, uneven, but real. Ava's fingers twitched. Her lips moved, barely. And Diesel didn't move, didn't breathe. He just lay there, still, quiet. And then, a single exhale. He'd held on. So had she. Together, Ava was no longer the same girl who had once stared out the hospital window in silence. She now walked with a soft limp, her voice fragile like wind through leaves. But it carried strength. She was alive. Alive because a dog refused to leave, refused to give up. Diesel became more than a therapy dog, more than a companion. He was her shadow, her protector, her anchor. When reporters asked Ava what she remembered most from that night, she simply smiled and said, "He stayed." Their story spread like wildfire, headlines around the world. Police dog saves dying girl by doing what no doctor could. The day a heartbeat returned with a bark. At a school assembly held in Ava's honor, she walked onto the stage with Diesel at her side. The crowd fell silent. She leaned toward the mic and whispered, "He didn't just save my life. He reminded me it was still mine to live." Diesel wagged his tail gently, as if he already knew.